Welcome to Caffeine's webinar on the key actions to protect your organization from social media threats. Today's guest speaker is Nick Hayes, an analyst for Forrester Research. This webinar will be presented by Rohit Valia, CEO and founder of Caffeine. This webinar will be recorded and a copy of the presentation will be sent to all attendees after the webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them on the questions section of the GoToWebinar panel, and we will try to answer them at the end of the webinar. And now, over to Nick.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the introduction. My name is Nick Hayes. I'm an analyst at Forrester Research. I've been with Forrester for close to 6 years now, focusing a lot on risk and compliance, and particularly areas when it comes to social media. So a very, excuse me, a very interesting topic for me that I love to speak about, and so I'm happy to be here today to talk to you through all this. Today we're going to talk about how to protect your social investment, and we're talking about this as an investment because really when we think about it, social media, yes, there are a lot of risks, and we'll get into those, but there's a bigger reward, and that's why we're here, and that's why we're thinking of ways to help manage it so we can help enable the business, grow it, and focus on how we can build better, deeper customer relationships. And then secondly, I'm going to talk about some of the effective mitigation techniques, some of the ways that you can actually manage the risks of social media. And finally, how you can ensure success throughout all this. So to start off, I like to think about us, and how the floodgates are open when it comes to social media. Your organization is using social media for a variety of business purposes. Your employees are using social media accounts, and the number of accounts and social networks that they use continue to grow and proliferate. And they're using it both for business purposes as well as for their own personal uses. And so this presents a number of challenges as an organization when it comes to governance, but it also is demonstrating how there are real ways for a larger portion of your set of employees to take the data that is on social media, make use of it, and actually find new communications channels to engage with customers in meaningful ways. So the floodgates are open today, and there's really not too much we can do to stop it. Even if you have policies, and I speak to many organizations that actually either did or are thinking about getting rid of their a ban on social media use within their organization. They're realizing it for a couple of different reasons. One, the business opportunity is too big, but two, to that second point about really just it not being effective. There's not a good way to ban social media. Your employees are using it, they're associating with your organization and LinkedIn and other channels. And so there are a number of ways that even if you do have that social media policy where you're banning the use of any type of use of it at your organization, I've spoken to customers who have actually had examiners come in and ask how they're proving and showing that they have that policy and how they're enforcing it. So, so even if you're not, you're still going to need to commit resources to making sure that you can prove compliance and prove that you have ways to effectively enforce that policy. So in any case, the floodgates are open, and we're in an environment that's really challenging. Your social environment is extremely complex, and this gets to the point. This illustration I've been using for a little while now just to try to illustrate exactly how complicated it is, how many different channels your employees are using to communicate externally with friends and family, but also customers. And it's not just marketing, and it's not even just sales today. It's other areas of your organization that are using it, like HR for recruiting and retention, R&D to find new ways to grow your investments for new ideas, and to source opinions about early releases and things like that. It is critical in customer service today, and really number of different ways organizations are leveraging social media across the workforce. So the challenge is how you have the right oversight, how you monitor that, how you understand what this environment is, both in terms of what it means within your own organization, as well as what your presence looks like and appears to be externally and on all these public channels. And To further complicate things, social media isn't just one thing. We all think of social media, we think of Facebook and Twitter, but even the difference between those two networks, with Facebook, you can really only have one social media account, whereas with Twitter, you can have as many as you would like. So there's a number of different issues in terms of identifying and authentication and issues that come into play when you start thinking about the different types of channels. And the way that you have control over different types is different as well. So enterprise social networks, for example, with Salesforce Chatter and Microsoft Yammer, you have a lot more control over that instance, over the types of capabilities and features and functionality that your employees have access to. Whereas on other channels, maybe you have less of an ability to do that, as your employees may be using their own personal accounts, and the infrastructure is obviously entirely hosted and not your own individual instance. And then there are so many other tools out there, instant messaging and mobile messaging, and the social web even, including marketplaces and review sites. The social web is essentially thinking about how every single website online, there are social elements to it. There are comment sections on media, newspaper sites, on Amazon, on Yelp. There's so many different places that you need to be thinking about what your presence is, how your employees are using it, and how you're thinking about how to manage this entire communications web. And then there are new issues with private social, like Snapchat, and how you start thinking about new ways that employees are kind of circumventing processes that may be in place. So the point is that it's a very complex area, very complex environment, and it continues to increase your risk exposure. There are more opportunities for corporate defamation, impersonations, and data leakage. It might be a little hard to see this example I have here on the right, but it's an example of something that happened just a couple weeks ago when Target released a new policy about how it was going to publish and talk about its sell its toys in stores. And when they did that, there was a large set of customers who were slightly upset and talking about it, and it was a fairly big issue. And then there was this one impersonating account that was created by an individual who started to pretend to reach out to all these customers that were complaining, and it exacerbated the whole situation for Target. The customers that he did reach out to started basically complaining even more. Obviously, some of the responses he was sending were really insensitive, were not the brand message, and so you have the situation where Target didn't even realize that this was happening until all of these customers started complaining about the terrible experiences it had. But this isn't just a reputational issue, it's also a security risk. Impersonating accounts can be used for social engineering, for social media phishing attempts. If you have an impersonating account that starts responding, which happened to EA Sports, the FIFA Twitter handle, and the video game Twitter handle, and impersonating account started offering to help out the customers that were having issues and just asking them to click on a link to provide their username and password. So just another example of how this can become even more nefarious. And then the second example also is that there are a number of different strategic and operational risks that come into play when we start thinking about social media use. This is an example of how actually his daughter was using Twitter and started talking about his travel, the vacations their family went on, as well as his business travel during the week. And all of a sudden, she started gaining a number of followers, all tracking her in order to better track the whereabouts of her father. And so basically, there are a number of examples where this can come up and lead to strategic issues just because of the public information that is now coming across on these new channels. And especially in the case of Michael Dell, Dell actually spends approximately $3 million annually to protect him and his family from physical security threats. So it really is a big issue, but there's a number of intellectual property, competitive intelligence issues that all require and all expand the exposure your organization faces today. And then delving into the security vulnerabilities, the Security Electronic Army, this is an example. They've done this to a couple of different accounts, but this one example was when they were able to gain access to the Associated Press Twitter handle and posted a couple of tweets about President Obama being injured in 2 explosions in the White House. And this actually sent the stock market crashing for 5 minutes or so before everyone realized that it wasn't an actual event, that he was fine, that there was no explosions, that it was just the account had been taken over. So, but the damage had been done, and this comes up again in a number of different circumstances. I've spoken to a number of different customers who have had their social media accounts infiltrated the night before they were going to release corporate earnings. So definitely just an issue that comes up and leads to a number of other security issues that are difficult to deal with. And beyond the risk challenges, the legal and regulatory landscape when it comes to social media is still just emerging. When we think of Facebook, we think of social media, we think it's been around for a while, but Facebook is just 11 years old or so right now, and even at that point in time it was just getting started at Harvard. So anyway, social media has come a long way in a very short time, and the regulators and the compliance regulatory bodies that have been around for decades, it just shows that there's obviously a little bit of a lag in terms of response, and also just shows how quickly we've been evolving. And so even when there has, and each one of the logos I show here has addressed social media in some form, and in most cases offered specific guidance about how to apply existing rules and regulations to this new communications channel. And so in most cases, social media is just being viewed as another form of electronic communications. But even when those guidance is still out, ambiguity is still really a key theme. The FINRA actually, who's kind of led the way in some ways and offered 2 sets of guidance, tackled a number of issues, talks about the differences between business and professional uses of social media. But even in that, it's still very difficult to define and understand, particularly because of the differences with LinkedIn versus Facebook. And LinkedIn in particular is similar to Facebook in that you're only allowed 1 account. So in terms of separating those personal and professional lives can be very challenging today. And new events, new warning letters, new legal cases that tackle new issues continue to arise and continue to get dealt with. Actually, somewhat in a funny, maybe not so funny, but an actual case where Kim Kardashian was actually reached out to and received a warning letter from the FDA for one of her posts on Instagram, where she talked about this amazing new drug that she was using, and the way that she was talking about it and the use cases she was mentioning on the Instagram post were not in line with the actual clear usages of that product. And so when Kim Kardashian is receiving warning letters, you know it's becoming a big deal. But there are other actual brands, organizations, all facing these same challenges, and some aren't as funny, and they're serious and need result in a number of really difficult issues for organizations to handle. And so the questions, even when they are established with these rules, are still very, very difficult to deal with. And some organizations are still rolling out guidance. FDA proposed draft guidance last year and faced a large pushback from a number of organizations that had issues with the guidance it was suggesting. And so it's supposed to come out with another round or finalized guidance this year. But as you know, we're getting somewhat closer to the end of the year and still no second round of guidance. So we'll see. It should still be on its way, but the point is it's still very unclear. Regulators, the compliance issues that are getting dealt with, they're slowly trickling out and getting dealt with, but it's still resulting in a number of governance issues, supervision, how we're managing this. They're really difficult issues to be tackling today. And then this is an image that I think a lot of us get in our heads, and definitely a number of questions that I've received. And I like to point out that this is not your workforce. Social media, it's often very easy to think about everyone wasting time, wasting productivity on social media, to talk about the tuna fish sandwich they had for lunch, to communicate and talk with friends and family instead of doing work. But this isn't your workforce. There are actual real reasons to do it. And the people that you want to empower, your career-driven employees, are the ones that even more so want to be using it for work. We asked this question to a large set of information workers across the globe, and we asked, do you use public social media for work? And more than double the number of employees that are career focused, that are thinking about how they can move up in your organization, care about their jobs, want to be thinking about how they can do better for your organization. These employees were more likely and already using public social media for actual work purposes. And social media is widespread, and it's adding business value across the organization. There's a number of examples in sales and marketing, the number of use cases where organizations are finding real ways to create build better brands, to build deeper customer relationships, engage in those right moments in time to ensure that there's a good customer experience. But there are also other departments that are using public social networks, using social media to their advantage, using it to even just promote and become brand advocates, which is an increasingly important part of the way that you spread word of mouth and way you spread information about your brand to the rest of the world. And so just going into some examples of some of the business benefits, they're real. And the opportunity, as I've said before, it far exceeds the risk. It's enhancing company brand and reputation. One study from the Stanford Business School actually showed that how organizations who use social media effectively, it's helped improve their liquidity and their presence in the market, their ability to raise capital, just because that they have a better presence and a better reputation. And it's deepening customer relationships. Morgan Stanley found that 40% of the financial advisors engaging on social media on a daily basis during one of its program rollouts, that 40% brought in new business through relationships curated on the social networks they were engaging in, including one deal that was $70 million for one advisor. So there's real opportunity there. And it's generating those new sales and generating new opportunities to reach out and engage at those moments in time. It's finding new ways to find new opportunities, but also make sure that when you are reaching out, it's the right point. Thinking about an example is just when you notice that one of your clients is having a baby, you can reach out and congratulate them and say this could be a great time to think about where you are financially and how you want to set up your family for the future. So that's just one of many examples, but it's a positive one. And finally, thinking about how you can empower your employees, thinking about how your career-driven ones, they're the ones that want to use it and the ones that are going to help you build that better brand organically. So we've talked a lot about the risk. We've talked a lot about the business benefits. So how do we manage this on an ongoing basis? What do we need to do? And so we need to try to guide appropriate behavior with effective tools, controls, and oversight. And so we're trying to get to that point where we're trying to balance both the risks and the opportunity, finding ways not to just say no to the employees that want to use it, but empower them, but making sure that they have the right effective ways to do it in a way that meets your compliance guidelines and that you have organized formal governance structures in place. So the first part that I always talk about is thinking about how you can incorporate risk management process. You can develop a formal risk management framework. We talk a lot about this at Forrester, and what this is a formal way that you can start thinking about how to explain the role of risk management, formalize the different stages of it. This is taken from the ISO 31000 framework, and it's the full process of thinking about how you establish the context of risk, how you're identifying risks, and analyzing and measuring them appropriately, and then all the way through to treating the risk and mitigating the risk based on which tend to be your highest priorities. This is a really effective approach for all organizations, but it's also becoming a compliance requirement. The FFIEC actually highlights the need for risk management programs in its social media guidance, and for a social media risk management program that's able to identify, measure, monitor, and control the risks related to social media. So engaging and formalizing the way that you're doing this, you're thinking about how you identify those risks, what the biggest risks for your organization might be different from another, and how you manage that on an ongoing basis, continually reevaluating your presence, reevaluating your risk environment. It's something that has to be done on an ongoing basis. And you also need to set guidelines in multiple places, thinking about the policies and the process behind that. We often talk about the social media social media policy, and that's definitely one of the main places where you're going to need to provide guidelines about how your employees can use social media effectively. But it's also done in other employee policies and code of conduct and discrimination policies. Many organizations address their use of social media data and how they'll engage with employees on their websites. And oftentimes they're starting to use it as a means of financial disclosures and releasing that type of information. And doing so in an accurate and appropriate way that meets guidelines with the SEC, with other regulatory bodies. You need to make sure that you have built in the right approach within your own guidelines. And so just to show that there are a number of different places, both internally as well as externally, thinking about the ways that you're going to curate your own customer conversations, thinking about what type of conversations are appropriate to have on your public social accounts, and what and when and how you will identify those conversations that are more sensitive, that need to be more secure, and find means to transition that conversation to other channels. And then what you want to do is implement effective controls and oversight on the process that you have. Thinking about how you can enforce policies with advanced supervision capabilities. Having policies in place is definitely very important, but making sure that you have capabilities to automatically identify policy violations. If you use the word guarantee, if one of your employees uses the word guarantee, there can be very different types of context. It can be, I guarantee that Apple stock will go up 20%, which is obviously a very strict no-no. But on the other hand, it could be, I guarantee that the Patriots will win the Super Bowl again, which would be, depending on how you feel about the Patriots, good or bad, but might be an appropriate social media post. So having the ability to enforce policies with the ways to monitor, to understand, and automatically detect the violations that come up and that risky behavior that you want to make sure is followed before the post goes live, or quickly detect it if there are issues that come up after the fact. And this goes to this point as well. It's thinking about how you actually automate the review and approval processes. So for different teams, there could be different reviews that you want to perform, thinking about the compliance capabilities for the supervision, thinking about how you actually facilitate that workflow, make sure that employees have the ability to provide the right comments and trigger the right second steps based on a first review that might need to go for a second review or might need to get deleted altogether. So making sure that you have the appropriate different types of channels and you have that ability, that workflow to facilitate the processes and supervision that you have. And then thinking about how you can track your known and unknown social presence. And this is thinking about both your brand in terms of your own organization, your own assets, thinking about your local social media divisions that are starting up branches or individual employees that are working and associating with your organization. And also the unknowns, those employees that maybe have left your organization but continue to associate with you as a current employer, or unknown threats, unknown security hackers that are looking to infiltrate your organization in different ways, creating brand impersonations, rogue accounts that are looking for ways to both disrupt your organization as well as find valuable sensitive data that you are trying to protect. And so on that line of protection, think about how you can protect your social assets from those external threats. Thinking about how you can find ways to make sure that if your social media account were to get hacked, that you have the right ways to identify potential risky behavior, posts that go live that weren't approved from random locations, or have the ability to make sure that you are noticing spammy type of behavior where the same post gets posted again and again and again. And so protecting your social assets from these types of threats can be very important, and having those capabilities to, again, detect when those events occur can be very critical to making sure that you remediate the situation quickly. And then definitely when you start thinking about the regulatory environment that you are in, making sure that you have the right ways to capture and archive the social data. Social media is very different than other forms of electronic communications. It's not like email. It's interactive. There are new types of features and functionality like being able to retweet and favorite, and the ability to comment after a post, the ability to edit and delete posts, the large amounts of rich media, of videos and images that are starting to exist. So making sure that you have ways to first of all capture and archive that data to meet regulatory requirements, but thinking about how you can build more flexible ways of storing that information for better and improved compliance purposes, for investigations, for policy checks. Being able to perform quick searches and filter by different types of keywords and different types of categories that you and your organization often face. So finally, I want to leave you with the last few recommendations for what you should think about and what I want to leave you with to focus on going forward. The first is make sure user engagement is your top priority. As I've been reiterating the entire presentation, what you want to do is make sure that we understand why we're here. We're here because the business opportunity is real, and there is an enormous way for your organization to benefit from building better brands and reputations, to building better customer relationships, to leveraging the data in new ways. So make sure you understand that that's the top priority, and then thinking about how you can enable and empower your organization by doing so, by coming up with creative solutions for governance, for risk and compliance. Secondly, start small and then provide ongoing support with content. So oftentimes when you're rolling out social media programs, a very good and common step is to start with a pilot program. Identify people that are more likely to be social savvy, more interested in helping your organization figure out how to use social media. And figuring out ways to provide ongoing content, ongoing support as you roll that out to larger and larger groups. Sprint actually created its training program called Social Media Ninjas, identifying and labeling as employees as ninjas who wanted to become social media advocates, and promoting best practices that applied to several associated principles such as self-control, moderation, and courtesy. And so you can start to think about it in that way, and there are many ways to do this, but thinking about how you start to really promote the use of social media in the right ways. And again, this ongoing support, this ongoing content, making sure that it's easy and intuitive for your employees to engage on social media. And thirdly, conduct regular social audits of your internal processes along with your external social presence. So this means thinking about both what internal systems, what internal assets are using social media, in what ways. Organizations routinely underestimate the number of accounts associated with their organization. Oftentimes they think they have 10, 20, maybe 30, but it's actually oftentimes upwards in the hundreds of social media accounts. And some of them are approved, some of them are not. And so understanding that your presence, both in terms of who's using it internally as well as how customers are engaging with your organization, with your brand on social media externally, is a very important aspect to making sure that you have the right ways of managing and understanding what your risk environment is. And lastly, lead by example. This is one of my favorite recommendations because I think it's critical to building the right culture around social media. It's making sure that regardless of what position you are in, whether it's marketing, information security, IT, compliance, that whatever policies that you are setting up, that you are actively promoting them. If you are building a social media program and are looking for ways to make sure that employees engage in the right ways, make sure that you're engaging also. Make sure that you're giving them reason and reassuring them that you and your organization is actually wanting to do this. So it's obviously a very important issue and something that can be very difficult and tricky, balancing where you stand, just thinking about privacy issues and thinking about where your own personal comfort is. But definitely try to make sure that, again, thinking about how you build the right social media culture within your organization, the right social business, is going to be critical to your success. So again, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. And I will now hand things back over to Caffeine, Rohit.
That was a great overview, and we appreciate your time in walking our audience through the challenges faced by organizations and also how to manage the risks emerging from social media. Let me give you a brief overview of Caffeine, and we will look at how Caffeine can be used by organizations to generally manage their social media platform in many different aspects that Nick had talked about. So we'll go over a little bit about Caffeine and then look at how security is part of our DNA and how the other use cases that Nick talked about are enabled by Caffeine. So Caffeine, I founded in 2013. It serves as a SaaS platform, which makes it really easy for organizations to do their social media analytics at scale, and is really designed to both manage the engagement and the risk management aspects. We're funded by Bitchemy Ventures and have some key IP that allows us to do social media listening and analytics from a contextual purpose, which on social media, as you can imagine, is very important because people say things differently. There are different kinds of abbreviations, etc. being used, and of course there are multiple languages that people talk in. So what are the different uses of social media in the enterprise? When you kind of look at all the different departments that are using social media, there's some commonality in what each of those organizational departments might be doing. Somebody is listening, discovering, trying to figure out what accounts are in use. Another department may be engaged in listening, but for the purpose of finding out who the prospects are to whom they could engage in with a conversation. Yet another use case is around customer service and customer care. So now you're listening to your customers who are writing on your social media accounts. And with social media accounts, I'm specifically referring to public social media here. And with that come all the other things you would want to be aware of. So how do I configure security alerts in case there's some conversation that really is of importance for my organization or brands? How do I manage that risk that comes from all of my different departments and employees using the social media platform, or even just using social media from their personal accounts? And then is all this data going to be archived? How do we manage that, especially across multiple channels? But there's an opportunity as well to leverage the social media. So how do I disseminate approved content? One of the things that Nick mentioned was when you're starting a program, you want to have some content available. And organizations have a ton of content, a lot of it sitting on websites, waiting for people to come to their website. Well, there are ways to distribute this content, and social media is a great platform to use for that. And then you can get analytics on exactly how your program's doing. And you want to engage your employees. So whenever you think in terms of a social media program, your employees are a secret weapon because they magnify, they amplify everything that you're doing in social media. And so for that reason, Caffeine comes together to bring all these different use cases that are enabled through a single platform, a unified social media engagement and risk management platform specifically designed for those to whom the risk is something they have to take care of first. They've been risk averse in not launching that social media program, but see the opportunity and want to engage now. So in terms of what you can do, and we had Nick's recommendations, and just to go a little deeper into how you could implement a trial or even expand your existing social media usage, I would certainly recommend you to just discover and listen. Just look for possibly fraudulent pages. Listen across networks regarding your brand. Also, protect your passwords. So a lot of social media programs have a few people who are trying to manage a corporate account. That itself can be a big risk. So with Caffeine, we can enable a way that you don't have to share these accounts. You need the ability to review the posts that are going from your corporate accounts. So getting a second opinion or approvals, you can set up so that every piece of post that's going on has a different policy on whether it needs a review depending on your department, organization, and how you actually push it to social media. Take control by getting a more centralized view on all the activity, by being able to respond, approve, archive, and even delete posts that could be harmful to your organization. And last but not least is workforce training. So as Nick showed us, the corporate social media policy is distributed across multiple documents in an organization. At this point, short of actually, consolidating, employees need to know what's okay and what's not. And while they're doing that, they also need to understand they're key players in your social ecosystem, and they can actually embrace and amplify your corporate social media programs. So with Caffeine for the regulated social enterprise, the things that we bring together is this concept of employee engagement, leveraging your employees to amplify your corporate social program while using curated content. So one of the things about social media is that the content itself is hard to come by in the sense of what do you say that's clever, pithy, in a 140 character limit. So having something that employees can find every day that's nice, interesting for their engaged followers is a great thing. Also, you can get visibility with Caffeine onto what the employees' scores are. And by employees here, it doesn't have to be everyone in the organization. You can choose who these employees are that have access to the platform. They could be in a certain team, in customer care, they could be in marketing, they could even be in sales. And with these scores, you can give them a real sense of accomplishment, and it will actually inspire sharing. But while we are doing that, we realize this is a regulated environment for most of you. And even if you haven't seen specific social media policies with regard to your organization, just being a public company can impose many risks for you. So from a risk management perspective, in Caffeine, you can create your policies in a sense to bring all those different documents and encapsulate them into a tool. So you can encapsulate not just the policy elements, but also the workflows and approvals. So there's a process aspect to manage that risk. And then you can get notification in real time as the posts are happening, as well as when there are violations of that policy. And now that we have enabled the two sides of the social engagement, both from it, being able to post and being able to listen and curate and analyze, with the ability to sell to the market, gathering social and competitive intelligence, and you can also get sentiment and trend analysis, all in a single tool which brings together all the power that social holds for the enterprise. So with Caffeine, you have now this unified social media platform. It's secured. Gartner recognized Caffeine as the first social media compliance vendor to optimize listening for employee monitoring. And they also, as Nick mentioned here, said that the social media risks associated with employee communications, which as we now recognize are just another form of digital communications, are increasing rapidly, and they require improved methods to ensure compliance. And part of their three-step process that they had advised was to have this policy, a governance structure, and the tools that can help you manage these many varied channels. So, how do you harness the power of your employees? You want to use them to really rocket fuel your social media program. And for that, Caffeine provides a robust multi-channel publishing platform for collaboration. You can onboard any select number of employees, and once they're onboarded, you have auto-archiving of employee posts, which doesn't require any software install in the browser. We amplify the reach by giving employees that pre-populated content that they can share. It's pre-populated and approved, so you don't have the risk that they might say something that you're not in agreement with. Now, of course, on their personal accounts, they can continue to do whatever they choose. And with the built-in approvals and scheduling, it makes it real easy for any of these people to appear more active on social, plan an entire week with content and be integrated into the corporate workflow analysis. Now, while we engage the employees on this aspect, we do want to ensure from a compliance and risk management perspective, because a survey by the Global State of Information Security survey of 2015 actually pointed out that in the financial services sector, a high percentage of security incidents happened which had the involvement of employees and former employees. So while we want to engage the employees, we want to have the guardrails in place so nothing untoward can happen on social media. And to do that, the other side of caffeine essentially helps you with the social threat and be able to remediate any issues. So as Nick pointed out, there are a number of different risks that you face in social media. You want to be able to manage the fraud that might be occurring on your brand. You want to do account discovery. You want to make sure your stakeholders are not being compromised, are not being talked about without your knowledge. By using location detection, you can have a sense of where a large percentage of activity related to your organization may be happening.
So in terms of the platform itself, as we talked about, the ability to post and schedule and then listen, Caffeine is unique in its ability to bring all that together in a centralized platform where you have a full policy check and analytics which are displayed on a integrated dashboard. And anybody who's actually doing any activity in the tool has an account on the same platform. That ensures that your risk and compliance program can be assured that their social media communications are being archived to meet all the regulatory needs. So let me kind of describe a little bit more about why Caffeine provides that complete social media platform to do both active prevention and detection of threats. With its deep engine that's embedded in the back of Caffeine's processing, we are listening to the fire hose that is spewing out all social media content and being published on multiple social media platforms. By tapping directly into the fire hose, we are able to manage both from a compliance perspective using our regulatory libraries, inspect all text and image, and do language-based inspection, provide you geolocation data, and enable you to both prevent and take action when something goes wrong in an organization's social media program. With its integrated corporate workflows, you have a single place where you set up policies that you already have documented but have no real way to enforce. And by using the workflow, both for the alerts and having a built-in case management system, you can actually work with these tools in one single place. And by providing a multi-channel publishing platform, you can bring together all your collaborators and use them to amplify your social media platform while having total control on what gets published and also enabling them to find useful new content that will enable them to go beyond just publishing their own organic content. So some of the key metrics that you get from Caffeine are also unique. So instead of just taking a simple view of providing you with the metrics from social media channels like likes, comments, shares, Caffeine combines those from multiple channels into a single score that you can then use to manage your activity across multiple platforms. So the social equity score is a measure of an individual's influence and then can be aggregated across departments to actually give you a score for a group or department. The impact score is a measure of the actual activity a individual may be doing, and then can also be grouped to give you a measure of the activity from a group or department in your organization. You can also use these scores to track external influencers and external organizations by using the discovery and listening features in Caffeine. And you get real-time sentiment score on all the posts, as well as you are tracking all the employee activity through its compliance score. So I would encourage you to get involved with Caffeine. As Nick mentioned, a great way to start your program is to start a pilot. We can offer a free trial that helps you meet your strategic objectives, and encourage you to download the ebook to learn more about risk management. With that, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the questions area, and I'll hand it back to Danielle. Thanks, everyone.